the year. At me thinking, now I thought I was going to be the smartest person in the room, but Stephen happened to just turn up that next step smarter. It's not a competition, but I lose every single time. But the point about this is that this is different. This is not me normally, but if you remember anything, that this will trigger the memory of, okay, well, what did we say as a state of the church address? What did we say? Because that Sunday was different. There was something that we spoke about. There was something going on. Graeme even wore something smart for once. I want to get you to turn to Joshua chapter 4. Joshua chapter 4. So you can go right back into the early part of the Old Testament. We're going back to the time, as you're looking there to find it, Joshua chapter 4, the time where God had led his people out of Egypt. He'd already got them to the promised land once, and then they'd left. They'd gone down to Egypt, they'd spent 400 years there, they'd been enslaved, they'd left under Moses, and then they came out and they walked around the desert for 40 years in circles. It was about a 2-week journey, so they really didn't listen to the ladies who gave them directions. The men just carried on wandering whichever way they wanted. And then they got to Joshua chapter 4, and we hear this, verses 1 to 9. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Now choose 12 men, one from each tribe. Tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up at the place where you will camp tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. And he told them, go into the middle of the Jordan. Notice he's actually copying God's words. That's a good habit. In front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it on your shoulder. 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We will use these stones to build a memorial. And in the future your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? And then you can tell them. They remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the ark of the Lord's covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. So the men did as Joshua had commanded them. They took 12 stones, repetition for the third time, from the middle of the Jordan River, one for each tribe, just as the Lord had told Joshua. And they carried them to the place where they camped for the night and constructed a memorial there. You may think, well, goodness, Joshua's got a habit of repeating himself again and again and again. But it's sometimes when you get something that's repeated, it's important to pay attention that there is a nugget of truth in that. And it's clear that God was really, really adamant that there would be a memorial. There would be some point to remind. There would be some point to say, yes, that's where we were, and things changed and we went forward. Something that we do nowadays, taking stock. Often people do in the season between Christmas and New Year, they take stock of their finances. They re-look at what they're going to do for the year. They start planning for things. Nations even do it. The State of the Union address, which is kind of where the title for the State of the Church address was stolen from decades ago, does the same thing. Where are they? Where's the country? Where's it going? What's happening next? There's even spiritual tools. If you've ever heard of the Examine, I've mentioned it once or twice before, but it's an Ignatian spiritual tool where you stop and you just ponder, where have I been in the last 24 hours or the last week? What has God been doing? What lessons can God highlight to me from that? 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 18 says, "Be thankful in all circumstances, for it is God's will for you who believe and belong to Christ Jesus." But we need to be thankful. Yeah, we don't look back exactly as it's been prayed. We don't look back and bewail anything in the past. We learn some lessons, we move on. We take that as an anchor point and start to progress. So as we just look back briefly and give ourselves a few reference points, there are some things that we can say. First things first, give yourselves a pat on the back. You have survived 2020. I know that's a miracle in itself in some ways. We have survived 2020. As a church, we've survived 2020. Things that the church has done, we've reduced the entirety of the church budget by over 25%. We have saved the church from what was actually quite likely financial collapse and have started the process of turning it round and putting finances into savings for greater purposes. We might hint at that later on. We've moved to the point where this is quite normal now to be a hybrid church model, something that we will continue, that it's normal to have cameras, to have people, to have half the church or more online at any one point. That's something that we've discovered, we've learned, we've journeyed through. We've reorganized the buildings and the facilities that we have, and we have seen how blessed we are. We have the use of 3 buildings, kitted out, purposed, repurposed in some senses, so that we have the facilities in base camp that now has new loos and new kitchen and stuff so that we can use it for all sorts of community purposes during the week. We're undertaking works in the maltings to get it ready to be able to be there as a particular home for our church, our house, our home. So that once COVID ends, we have somewhere where we gather normally, naturally. Not just services in here, but in the maltings, gathering up, being family, being together. Preparing for that moment when COVID will end, which it will. It will end, and we want to use this time to be ready. So we've been doing that over the last year. We've been doing works across the site, doing all sorts of different things, getting things sorted, getting things ready. This building, can you even realize that this building wasn't painted a year ago? That seems crazy. It was only a couple of weeks before lockdown. Things got sorted. We've got loos being sorted out at the back where we'll have the facilities finally to be able to welcome in all sorts of different groups. And actually, not only that, but to be able to use the loos on a Sunday for more than one person at a time. Progress. We are making progress. And we've delivered thousands of meals this year, thousands of lunches to people in need, people who are hungry, people who are in need of not just the food that was given, but also the connection to another human being. For my birthday last year, I was given a great big towel that has an oversized OS map, because if you know me a little bit, you know that I love walking. And the map is of Snowdon. It's an area that I've walked quite a lot before. And when I got it, I got it and laid it out on the bed and had a look at all the different places that were on there that I'd walked and the paths and the different bits and pieces that I know. Whenever you get a map out when you're walking, you do a few things. You look back, you get a few reference points. Where were we? Where have I been? You then use those to work out where you stand now. Where am I at this moment? Because once you've got that point, you can then work out where you're going. So where are we now? Well, we still have about 1,100 people on the database. That seems crazy. That's something that we're in the process of working through, because to be honest, that is a crazy number that it reflects nothing of who we are as a church now. It's been like that for years. But we need to go through. But that's what it says. We have 156 people who are listed as those who are part of the church, giving, serving, living, active, involved, doing different things, involved and engaged in the ministry and the action of the church. Interestingly, across 2020, that number didn't change. That number stayed constant. We have somewhere in the region of 75 people who give more than £1,000 a year. As Rue rightly said during the offering, actually, we all give in different ways, but God does have an expectation. God does say, test me now in this. But for a church the size that we are, 75 seems a little low. It's important that we are all in this together as a family. And actually, practically, half of those 75 give over £2,500 a year to enable this church to function, to enable this church to thrive, to do what it's doing. What else have we got at the moment? Well, we've got 9 staff, equivalent to 6 full-time members of staff, functioning, trying to make this church work and bless our community and bless each other and take things to that next level. And we have roughly 300 odd people, or online views, I should say, every single service as time goes on, along with people in the building. That's where we currently are. We've managed, not only in the reduction of the costs, at the tail end of last year, we managed to knock off the VAT that was applied to our rent of this building. So instead of paying £120,000 a year for this site, we only pay £100,000. £20,000, that makes a massive difference. That's a fantastic bit of news. If you were here on the Watch Night service, Bruno announced that not only to that, we also have been given a grant for £20,000 to redo the kitchen upstairs in the maltings, to be able to give us the catering capacity to bless our community even more. That's great news. That's fantastic news. Those are lines that triangulate where we are at the moment, points us to a position on the map so we know where we are. There's some other things. I've got a few slides that we took some soundings, some data from some of the guys in the heart for the house, the wider leadership, those who are involved in leading ministries, people who have got involved in different ways, have got teams that they lead, life groups, that sort of stuff. And we've got just 4 images. If we can throw the first one up, it may well go up online as well as behind me. That's cool. You can see actually in the confusion of 2020 and the confusion of COVID, general perspective is that we didn't do too bad. That's not, I'm quite chuffed by that. People, 52% thought that we did very well. That's more than I thought. 48%, or the rest, pretty much split between not bad considering, I'll take that, and not great for a few people. We've done this year, we've got through this year, the next one. We see the level of commitment to the church, the level of commitment to what the church is doing and where the church is going, if we've got that next slide. People believing in the values, having roots, friendships, connections, people who pray regularly for the church. This is what it's about. This is the state of where we are, the state of the church address. We have to know where we are. We've gone through, if we can have the next slide, I'll do a Chris Whitty moment. Next slide, please. Despite some of the changes that we've gone through in structure to re-establish our eldership model, to re-establish the leadership structure of the church and to develop where we're going, actually, if you can see on there, the vast majority, 3/4 of those wider leaders entirely get and fully understand where we are, where we're going, what the structure is and what the vision and direction of the church is. And then finally, the level of daily engagement, active in their faith. That's the kind of church we want to be. That tells us where we are now. And if it isn't all number 10s, I'm not worried, because we know we're on a journey. We know that we're always working towards where God is calling us to, and He has perfection in mind. But He's calling us there step by step. So where are we going? That's given you those reference points. That's planted us on the map and given us the 8-figure grid reference. We know where we are. That's important. That's right to know. But once we know where we are, we have to look forwards. We have to look forwards. In September, whilst at home with COVID, I recorded those first couple of sermons in the Reset series, where we looked at and we shared the dream, the vision that has driven this church for years, that we believe it is God's will to build a large, outward-looking church, one that is strong in membership, one that is growing in maturity, that's dynamic in ministry, that's dedicated to mission, and that he's awesome in worship. And with God's help, we will achieve those goals. God gave the headline figures and the headline facts to his people. Every time he leads his people somewhere, he gives them the dream. He gives them the ambition. He gives them the overwhelming vision, the overarching sight of what it's going to be. But then later on, he adds detail. Joshua, as we started with, was given the command by God to take the people across to the other side. But then we get more detail coming on. Joshua 1:2 says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the river Jordan into the land I'm giving them. There's the headline. There's the overarching direction. But then God breaks them down a bit more. If you flick on back to Joshua chapter 6, and in verses 2 and 3 it says this, Joshua chapter 6, verses 2 and 3. But the Lord said to Joshua, I have given you Jericho, its king and all of its strong warriors. You and your fighting men should march around the town once a day for 6 days. That's pretty clear advice, isn't it, for how you should attack that city. Now, it's not logical advice, I'd give you that. It's not traditional warfare, go march around the city rather than attack it. But God starts giving specific advice. Joshua seeks God, and God gives him a guide as to what he should do. Interestingly, Joshua then doesn't seek God for the next city, the city of Ai, spelled A-I. And what happens is that it all goes to pot. This overwhelming force of God's people go up and they try and attack the city, and it all goes wrong. 2-3 times they have to go through this process of trying to retake Ai because they didn't listen, because they didn't seek God, because they hadn't got the clear plan. God leads his people with clear goals, with clear challenges. And so I am pleased, I'm excited to be able to share with you some of those things that are the next steps for CPC. As we start to put some flesh on the bones of the vision, we start to give you some targets for where are we going and what are we doing across this next year. And there are 3 for each. 3 for membership, 3 for maturity, 3 for ministry, 3 for mission. Guess what? 3 for worship as well. And for membership, the 3 things are this: that we want to understand the true level of engagement in every demographic of the church. We want to know who is part of that church. We don't just want a headline figure that is 1,100 names on a database. We want to know people. We want to know the church. We don't want to have this list and have no idea. We want to know each person. And to that end, the second point builds on that we want personal direct contact 3 times a year at least with the entire congregation. That means that every single person who is part of this church, we will make contact with you deliberately, not just see you on a Sunday. But because Sundays are great, but Sundays so often it's fleeting. We want to talk with you. We want to catch up with coffee or have a phone call or have a proper, if you're an email-y kind of person, we'll do an email chat with you, whatever it might be. We want to spend time with you, getting to know you. And the third one is we want to end the year with a clear route to membership established, that everyone can find an easy way to get involved, that it's not a mystery, it's not a question mark of, who do I go to next? We want to be clear. We want to be able to end the year strong in membership, together, engaged with each other, in relationship. There's 3 in maturity. The provision of a broad range of courses, studies, training opportunities with, and this is the interesting bit, a take-up rate of at least 50% of those who are engaged in the church or are members. We want to be able to scratch where you're itching. We want to be able to provide training and resources and support where you need it. And we'll know that we're doing it because of the fact that people will access it. That's an important thing. It's a change. We don't want to just come up with what we think you need. We want to hear building off all those points before, and we want to respond and we want to engage and be able to expound and shape and explain things and answer questions and enable you to get involved, enable you to engage with the teaching and the training. To that end, if you want it, it's there available that we're going to guarantee up to 3 sessions of a couple of hours each. If you've got something you really want to work through, we're here. As elders, we're here to provide that opportunity. You want to argue a point, you've got something going on, you want to spend some time, then we'll make it available. Because it's about God's people. It's not about ticking off services. It's not about all the high figure numbers. It's about people. It's about relationships. It's about the purpose of God. And we want to provide training, specific training for the people who are upcoming leaders in this church. Those who are going to be the ones who take this place forwards into the future. Skills, essential knowledge. How do we do things? What are we doing? Where are we going? How do we make things work in this place? We don't want to just keep throwing people into leadership with a good luck. We want to give you a fighting chance, more than a fighting chance, that you can step forwards and lead with confidence in this place. We want to be a church that releases its people, its members, its congregation to not just be part of a flock, but to lead flock, to lead the sheep, to lead the God's people in this area. We've always dreamed of being a resource church. Let's be it. But who is the best resource? People. Tech is great. Finances are great. People make a difference. God's people make the difference. In ministry, absolutely as you'd expect. We want simple but effective provision of all of the expected services, kids and youth, when we get out of COVID. It'll be good to get all of that back. Sunday services and all the associated teams. Communication and our central administration, we want to take to that next level, to be simple and effective at all times. We want to provide to you, and this is something that we need your relationship with us in. We want to provide life event support. You know, stuff goes on in our lives, don't we know it? There is always something going on in life, and COVID's something that's laid across the top, but there's always sickness, there's always challenge, there's always something going on, or celebrating, or new birth, or an event, even down to crazy big birthday parties. We want to be able to provide life event support, holistic services to the congregation. We want to be able to do blessings and dedications, baptisms, weddings, marriage preparation, funerals, counseling, life skills, all that sort of stuff. But it means we need to know. We need to be part of. We go straight back to those conversations. We need to be part. We need to be family. We need to be together. We need to be able to communicate. And we want to show massively additional care and support for our leaders. We are so grateful for the guys who we invite to the Heart for the House, and we have done for years. All those who are potential leaders or leaders within the church. We want to provide that additional support because you carry so much of the weight of this church. You guys are the ones who are the linchpin between the staff and the eldership and the practical core engine, as it were, but you get it out there and make the teams, enable the teams to serve. That makes a difference. That makes all the difference. Mission, that's important as well. This may seem a crazy thing to say, but our top priority in mission is good public recognition that there is actually a church here. That sounds crazy, but when you look at the building with a critical eye, what do you see? You see a sign that doesn't even say the word church. It says the word God once. We need to change that. We need to know that, make sure that there is good public recognition that CPC exists, that it is a church, that's also going to help, and that it is known for an attitude that we love God, that we love people, and we love life. We want those values to become embossed into the way that people consider who we are, see us, engage with us. In the new year, at some point over the next few weeks, we're hoping to get a trussing cross, something modern, something dynamic, up on the wall of this building. It's a great big flat white building. It's going to have this big modern cross that will be backlit. So even in the middle of the night, there will be God's love shone out from this place, visible, recognizable. It is a universal symbol of God's people. So we're going to do it. We're going to make sure that people know. We're going to make sure that we live out that life. We have to be consistent. We can't just put lights up on a cross and go, we're done. We've got to live it out. That means that our second point under mission is there's going to be annual, deliberate acts of evangelism into our communities. We have 5 communities around us. To the north, we've got Damagos Way. To the south, we've got West Court, which sounds completely illogical. We've got North Court to the west. You see why I'm getting a bit confused. We've got Chalk to the east. And then wherever you live, you may not live in the immediate community next to the church, but you are part of a community. You are part of a neighborhood, a street, a work group, a community wherever you might be, mums and toddlers, whatever it is, you are part of a community. We want to make deliberate evangelism, deliberate outreach into each of those groups. So much so that we've taken a punt. We can change it if we need to. But the first weekend in June, we have planned and we've provisionally booked a huge amount of inflatables and different bits and pieces. We want to open up this site. We want to fling wide the doors. We want to get people from the community, from your community, from my community, from the communities around the church here. We won't have a Sunday morning service because we'll be doing Sunday morning service. We want to engage with our community. We want to engage with the people around to make sure that people know that God loves them. Can we do that? That's a challenge. And if we need to roll it back to July, we will. We can. But we've put a date in the diary. We're going to work to it, see what we can achieve. And we want to provide relevant training opportunities. We have a missionary room left, ready and open and waiting for people in Uluru. So far, I'm the only one who's gone and used it. It's sitting there waiting. I want to get back there this year, but you know what? It shouldn't just be for people who have got a title or a badge or an expectation. That room needs to be used. We want to train people for mission, whether it's in India, whether it's in Northern Africa, wherever it might be across the world. Over the years, we've sent missionaries to Mexico and different places. We want to make sure the training is there to equip you to go. That's something Stephen's particularly looking after, and I'm excited to see what is going to be happening. And then worship. So often, worship has been something that we've used to define us as a church. And it's important that we give God the best that we are possible and able to give him. But we want to make sure, it's a target, it's an ambition, that there is vibrant, modern and engaging congregational worship times. That means not just services, but prayer meetings. That's still worship. Provided by a team creatively here at the church, something that is going to be ongoing, constant, different opportunities, different ideas. That doesn't just stop providing for adults. There'll be ministry-specific expressions of worship facilitated for all age groups, for all groups and for all ministries. So if you're heading up a group, if you're pioneering something, we want to support you. We want to enable you to be able to worship God in those settings. And not to forget about our own personal devotion, our own personal worship. We want to provide those spaces. We have prayer rooms. But also resource you. Whether it be music, whether it be the pointing you to things like Lectio 365 or some of the other great resources online to help your devotional life, to engage and support and encourage you. We want a signpost. So that as a church, we don't just focus on Sundays or we don't just focus on ministries, we focus individuals on God. Yeah, it's not just about the big stuff, it's about the personal change. The Crusade for World Revival, you might know them more familiarly, if that's such a word, CWR, as a publishing company. Their express purpose is to foment world revival by reviving the individual Christian. We want to achieve that. We want to release you guys. We want to empower you guys as a church, that we are not just a congregation who does stuff, but we are individuals who serve our King and our God with vibrancy and with power and with determination. 5 lots of 3. Different ones of those will have washed over you because they don't engage where you happen to be. But ones I hope that you connect with your heart, connect with your ministry, connect with where you are in the church, will stick, will engage. Grab your thinking. How can you join in on that? How can you build something using that? What can we do to support? What can we do to enable you moving forwards? Joshua chapter 6, verse 6. The very first thing that Joshua did when God had given him clear command was that he called together the priests and said, take up the Ark of the Covenant, and assigned 7 priests to walk in front of it, each carrying a ram's horn. In December, we released these 15 statements and a summary of it to the Heart for the House, to the guys who have been committed to the church, who have been involved in leading and bits and pieces. It's important. It's important to make sure that people are aware. It's important that they are able to shape the way they lead their departments. But Joshua didn't stop by just telling the leaders. He didn't do that. He carried on in verse 7. Then he gave orders to the people, march around the town, and the armed men will lead the way in front of the ark of the Lord. It's important that we are all aware. It's important that we're all in this. There is nobody who needs to be left out. There is nobody who shouldn't be aware of what God is calling them to do. That is important, that we are in this together. It is you and me and Stephen and Claire, and I can look around the room, Christiana, all the different people in here. I get confused between all the Christines, Christina, yeah. By the end of it, I'm just sort of writing Chris, ... But all of us, called by God for a purpose, because you know what? Actually, we are all God's priests. We are all called by Him. We are all gifted by Him. And we know we're priests because we eat the sacrifice. When we take communion, as we did on Christmas Day, we eat the sacrifice. That's what the priests did. And symbolically, God calls us His priests. In 1 Peter, it talks about it. Royal priesthood, chosen people, a nation belonging to God. That we are because we are His. Interestingly, as the band want to start coming up, Jesus never expected His disciples to drop everything the first time He called them. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but actually, when He first talks to them, we often assume that it was the point where He said to the guys on the shore who were mending their nets, come and follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. Well, we need to go back a little bit to John chapter 1, verse 39. And instead, that's the point where Jesus, meeting John's disciples, people who already were searching for God, and He calls them and says, come see. Come and see what is going on. Come and see what I'm doing. Come and see what God has in store. And then once they'd seen, once they'd explored, once they'd had a sense of what God was doing, then Jesus seems to up the ante. Matthew 16:24 says, take up your cross and follow. Notice, Jesus didn't start there. But He does get to that point. He does get to that point with a challenge, and the challenge is coming. But it's important that we know what we're getting into, and it's important that we know where we're going. No one should ever join a challenge or a purpose without knowing where it's going, because you don't know what you're committing to. But God calls us to come see. And this morning is about trying to give you a sight of come see where God is taking this place. Come see where God is going with CPC. Come see what He's going to do. Because the commitment challenge comes at the end of it. So what will all of those things that I've said look like? Well, we stay as a hybrid church. We stay. We are never going to go back to just doing Sunday services and popping a camera on just for the sermon. We are going to stay hybrid because God can use the tools that are now in place for so many other purposes. We have people in One Wall Hall that we can reach out to who just cannot get here. We have people who are scattered around the country who can't get here or at home because of illness or physical incapacity who can't get here. God can use that. We don't live in in a serial world anymore. We have iPlayer and Netflix. So the church goes hybrid. Everything that we do, every course, every resource, every material that we put out will be hybrid because it's important. Just because you work at a certain time doesn't mean that you miss out. Just because you physically can't get there doesn't mean that you don't get to engage. We go hybrid because we want to go together and we want to go strong. We'll be online and in person as much as we possibly can, depending on the tiers over the next few months. But we will stay hybrid. We will continue, and I find it a real pleasure, we will continue to use the body of the church in the services of the church. I love it when Rue gets up and starts talking about her experience and sharing from her heart. I love it when the mixture of the different teams and the different people on platforms share and give their abilities. They honor God. I love it when people share in different scenarios and pray and the different people we've had up. That's great. That's exciting. That's good. We're not going to stop it. We want to use as many people as we possibly can. Some of you might come to the point, if you've been asked and you've said yes, you may come up to the platform trembling as you bring a prayer or you bring a blessing. That's okay. We're not going to force anyone up. We're not going to strong arm you. But we want to use as many people as possible because God has blessed his people with gifts. 1 Corinthians 12 talks about the gifts that he has given all of us, different gifts. We want to give people the opportunity to use their gifts wherever they are. We want to, across this year, we'll be simplifying and making easy the process of signing up to get involved. I'm not going to bore you with the details now, but it'll be simple, it'll be clear, and it'll be consistent across the entire church. So you can get involved, you can find your niche, you can get into the life of the church. Because once you find a space, once you can serve, once you can see that what you're doing makes a difference, it empowers you and strengthens you like nothing else. Maybe apart from God. I've mentioned Heart for the House a couple of times. Heart for the House from now on is open to all. For anybody who has a heart for God's people in this place, for anyone who desires to build God's people in the church that is here, we want to invite you to every single one of the Heart for the House meetings where we will share the dreams and ambitions, we will share the shape and the journey that we're going on. Yeah, we'll expect the leaders to be there, but if you've got a heart for this house, then we'll make sure that you know. We'll advertise them. Join us. Come be part of the journey. There's no exclusion. There's no exclusivity. One of my personal favorites, we're going to have some fun, or I am at least. We're launching Taboo Tuesdays. About 5 times in the year, we're going to take on the Tuesday night some of the hot topics, things that we can't talk about here easily because you need to explore them. You need to take it back to the Bible and say, what does the Bible say? What does it actually say? What have we thought it said? What does it there teach us? And how do we apply that into the life of the church? So the 2nd of February, first Tuesday in Feb, we're going to kick off by looking at what the Bible says about homosexuality. What does it actually say? Not what do we assume, what do we want it to say, what do we think it should say, but what does it say? And we'll journey through that. We'll explore that process and therefore how we should love and be gracious with people. We start today, in fact we start next week particularly, on a journey for 3 months where we are going to explore maturity for us as a church. Last year we different months we looked at different things and explored in different directions. We want to spend 3 months looking at maturity. It's not about the number of years you've been a Christian. It's not about the number of grey hairs you have or the title that you happen to carry, the position that you have in church. We're going to explore what maturity is in the Bible. Then we'll move on to mission because by the time we reach summer, our town, our city will need to know of their Saviour. They'll be desperate, having got through all of the craziness of COVID. That's why we've got a Sunday Funday booked in. That's why we're planning so much for the summer. Sunday evenings, are going to return in short bursts. And we're going to kick off 24th, I think, of January. We're going to kick off with a 3-week session on how to study my Bible. How do I study my Bible? So often people can read their Bible, and that was one of the questions we asked, and you saw the answers on the screen. But how do I study? We'll take you through it. It won't just be a sermon, it'll be a practical process of how do I study the scriptures in front of me? How do I understand what God is saying? A couple of months later, we'll be looking at prayer in the same way. Our brunches and our breakfasts will all be back COVID safe as soon as we possibly can. Psalm 126 verse 3 says, "The Lord has done great things for us, and we are glad." I'm grateful, genuinely, exceptionally grateful for what God has done in 2020. He's blessed us through this year. But we know that we're called to more. We're called to live lives that will mature in Him, to serve Him. And so the question comes back to, now I've hopefully given you a taster, a come and see. Over this year, will you choose? Will you choose to commit? Will you choose, whether it's now or later on, to step in, to make that decision, to be part of the family, to serve, to give, to live, to be part of everything that goes on? Or do you stay in the seat? Do you stay on your sofa? Do you stay in a seat in the building? Do you turn up? The choice is yours. But God has got a calling on this place. God has got a purpose, and God knows where He's taking us. And 2021 is only the start. So you join us if you want. Join us in this journey. Join us as we go forwards into all that God has planned, because He will win. He reigns on high in heaven. He reigns above everything and everyone that ever could be around. He is God. He is supreme. He is the one who is above and not beneath. He is the head and He is not the tail. And we are only ever with Him in those places because of His grace. So I ask you, that dream that we talked about, the end line says, together, with God's help, we will achieve these goals. Well, I want to add the word together in. With God's help, together, we will achieve those goals. Are you with me? If you're with me, stand to your feet. Even if you're at home, stand to your feet. And don't just do it because the person next to you's done, because that's kind of daft. But we stand because we stand before a God who is almighty, before a God who is reigning on high. And He has dreams and He has purpose. And He has guided His kingdom from literally the beginning of time. And He will lead us on, and He will lead us to His glorious coming eventually. But between now and then, we will do His works. We will serve His purposes. We will honor our God. Amen? Amen.